fundamentals test 6 to start with. You guys noticed that when Garrett was pulling the engine out of the Kia over there, it looked like it was going to be a real simple job, but he ran into trouble.
Yeah.
And when he got the transmission and the engine separated, he couldn't get the engine out because it was just couldn't get clearance nowhere. Now, if he took the intake manifold off and all that, if he stripped it down to a long block, he could probably lift it right on out of there. But putting all that back together is kind of a pain, because he'd have to pull all that stuff off the new engine, and he could do it, but it's going to be aggravating, you see. So why did he get in that trouble?
Well, when he checked the shop manual, it told him the engine was supposed to come out from the bottom.
But when did he check the shop manual? After he got in over his head. You got me? He got in over, he figured I can just wing it. And I'm always telling you guys, if you wing it, the worst thing that can happen if somebody wings it and they, don't have any problem a couple of times in a row, next thing you know, you wing it. And there was a shop over there when I was back in the late 90s. I was working on all these power stroke diesels, that there's a lot of that stuff going around because a lot of power stroke diesels pretty big, and there wasn't no training on them much back then. I mean, I did some training out in Texas on them, went and held some classes to teach people about them in 2003. But the thing about it is, this one shop over there fixed 3 or 4 of them winging it. And they thought, man, we got this thing down pat. These ain't hard to fix, and we can make a lot of money on that. Well, then they ran into one that smacked them around to the point to where they had $4,000 worth of parts and labor installed on that thing, and it still ran exactly the way it did because they didn't understand that system as well as they thought they did, and they got in over their head. You know what I mean? So if you've got books to look at that's got good information in them, the smartest thing to do before you start any great big job is just go and read what the book says and see how what you're going to run into. And that way you're not, but I saw him, when I saw him walk over there and start picking up wrenches and just taking stuff off of that thing, I knew he was going to get in trouble. But I let him do it because he will not do that again. You know what I mean? It's a learning experience. I mean, and I don't enjoy seeing somebody do that, but he'll understand it better now. He'll know better next time to do it.
But I think if he had taken the alternator off and he had taken that guard and the radiator out and give himself some room because that thing is pushed down below back.
Yeah, he could still try that if he wanted to. He might be able to do it. And the mechanics that work on those things in the dealership have done usually enough of them to where they can tell you exactly what you got to do. But if you don't have the benefit of that, you got to bundle a lot of them, you get in the book and you find out what it is you're supposed to be doing, or you'll get in trouble. Number 1, this is fundamentals test 6. All overhead valve engines what? A, use an overhead camshaft. B, use a camshaft close to the valve. C, operate by a Wankel cycle. What's that? That's like a rotary engine. Okay. Have the valve located in the cylinder head. That's actually D, which is a really stupid kind of a thing, unless you're talking about comparing them to what? What engine does not have the valves in the cylinder head? What engine can you think of that does not have the valves in the cylinder head? Even overhead cam engines have got the valve in the cylinder head.
Yeah.
Well, what engines don't have the valve in the cylinder head? See, this is a sort of a screwed up mess here.
Well, I know some 2 cycles don't.
What about Briggs' Stratton flathead lawnmower engines?
Yeah.
Those are in the block. Or like flathead V8 engine, or some of the Continental engines that I've seen in forklifts. I mean, the Continental's an industrial engine company, or they used to. I don't know if they're still around, but I've rebuilt some engines that had the valves in the block, and that's a flathead engine. Is what they call it. The engine just on there to provide a combustion chamber and all that. But anyway, and the valves. If you pull the head off, you'll see the valves over here next to the cylinders. Okay, a single overhead cam V8 engine has how many camshafts?
2.
Huh?
2.
Yeah, it's got to have 2. Single overhead cam means 1 on each head, right?
Yep.
Is that Toyota Camry engine out there on the stand that we've got, is that a dual overhead cam or a single overhead cam?
There.
Yeah.
Only got 1 block. So.
Well, I mean, is it?
Even if it's got 1 block, you can still have 2 cams.
Yeah, if it's only 1 bank, it still can have.
It's a 16
Is it a
valve,
single
right?
overhead cam or a dual overhead cam?
Is it a 16 valve?
Huh? Huh?
Is it a 16?
How many pulleys does it have that for on the, in other words, how many camshaft pulleys does it have for the timing belt?
I want to say it's just got one.
It's just got one. Is it dual or is it?
I believe it's dual.
Okay, how do you figure?
When me and Melissa went over there and was looking at it the other day, we were checking out everything. And normally a motor will say SOHC or DOHC on the valve
Maybe,
cover.
but I don't know if you can count on a Toyota telling you that, or a Honda or something. But if it is, what if I told you it is dual overhead cam? How do they make that work?
And they have that one pulley turning 2 gears.
Yeah, there's a gear inside, and the 2 camshafts that are inside turn opposite directions, which is interesting in and of itself, right? And there's also, one of them has got scissor gears. Now, one of the things you got to recognize about camshafts is, camshafts, have you ever turned a camshaft with a wrench? It was unhooked, you have.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? He goes boom, 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 boom.
yeah.
It's doing that when it's running too. And if you've got gears directly meshed, you better have it fixed to where there's no lash there at all. Lash meaning, slack between the gears. Okay, so if you have, anytime you hear about lash is slack. Valve lash is how much slack there is between the top of the valve and the whatever's opening if you're setting valve lash. But anyway, if you don't have camshaft, if you don't have lash between those gears, then what you're going to wind up with is a noisy son of a gun. And on those Volkswagen Bug engines, they used to have 10 or 11 different camshafts, and each one of them had a slightly different pitch to the gears. So you had to set it up so there was absolutely no valve lash at all. Because if you set it up where there was slack in there, that thing would rattle to beat the band. It just sounded horrible, It wasn't damaging, it just didn't sound good, So anyway, the Toyota people put 2 gears together, and they're not the only ones that do it, and they have a spring in between them. And you have to load that spring and put a bolt in there, and then whenever you line the timing gears up and put those chains in there, you got to unload that, pull that bolt out, and those scissor gears pinch the other gear so that they never have any lash at all. And so just keep that in mind. If anybody pulls the camshafts out of a Toyota Camry engine like that and puts them back together without those gears loaded, and I can show you what I'm talking about, it's going to make a rattling noise under the valve cover that's just horrible. Coolant flow through the radiator is controlled by what?
It's controlled by the thermostat.
That's right. It's controlled by the thermostat. That's right.
The water pump is what makes it go, though.
Mm-hmm. But it's controlled by the thermostat. Nothing goes through the radiator if the thermostat says no. Got me? Where does it go if the thermostat's closed?
Bypass.
It bypasses and goes through the heater core,
Heater core.
or wherever else it bypasses to, right? Because it needs somewhere to go. And it needs to be able to circulate around. Torque is expressed in what?
Pounds feet.
Have you seen that written down somewhere?
D.
Huh? Pound feet? Have you seen it written somewhere? Could you find it written somewhere on a tool in this shop?
Yeah, probably that torque.
That big old snap-on torque wrench says pound feet. But whenever you talk to mechanics all day long, unless it's one from somewhere, they say foot pounds. But pound feet. And as a matter of fact, if you look in your book, how is it abbreviated? Lbs foot. LBS period FT period. Right? One cylinder of an automotive 4-stroke cycle engine completes the cycle every how many?
720.
720 degrees. It's got to go.
5.
Huh?
You skip 5.
Did I skip 5? Horsepower is what? I'm sorry, number 5.
Calculated as torque multiplied by engine speed, RPM, and then divided by 5,200.
Divided by 5252. But it's also called what?
Measurement of engine power.
Engine power.
Yeah, measurement of engine power. That's right. One cylinder is complete, say. Now, this is really a badly worded question. One cylinder of an automotive 4-stroke cycle engine completes cycle. See, what do you not like about that question?
Because it completes the cycle.
They're talking about a cylinder, and they're talking about degrees. Degrees meaning what?
Circle.
I mean, but what is it that's turning 720 degrees?
The crankshaft.
The crankshaft, but they didn't say that. And I would put every blank of crankshaft rotation if I was going to write this. If I was going to write that, I think. There's Kathy. How you doing? I thought I smelled
You
perfume.
got a sign on those. That's all your reprint. That's what's on sale today.
Wiper blades, $249 each, all clean few wiper blades. Yeah.
$249 each for the wiper blade?
Hey, this is a real parts house, okay? We sell parts on special.
That's good.
We burned him good on that, didn't we?
Yeah.
All right, lay
Yeah.
those in there and I'll sign them and get them sent
That
back.
is a steal.
What name brand is that?
Clean view.
Clean view, yeah,
Pretty good.
yeah.
Well, even our name brand ones are $12 a piece.
Yeah, these right here are, this is special they run every now and then. And sometimes I'll just buy a whole bunch of wiper blades for the trainer cars and all that when I got them on sale like that, you know. You can buy 10 sets of wiper blades for $25. You know what I mean? Ain't bad on that deal. All right, let me see. How many rotations of the crankshaft are required to complete each stroke of a four-stroke? Let's see, this is the same question,
How interesting.
except it's not talking degrees.
I'm gonna say 2.
Each stroke. Each stroke.
Oh, half.
1/2. It starts at the top, it goes to the bottom, that's a half a stroke, right?
That's a
A
decent,
rotating force is called what?
torque.
Torque is right. This is simple stuff. You guys ought to be able to talk it out of the top of your head. Technician A says crankshaft determines the stroke of an engine. Is he right?
Huh? No.
Seriously? Technician B says the length of the connecting rod determines the stroke of an engine.
Hey,
What? Yeah, I'm gonna say connecting rod.
What?
I'm gonna go with A.
You can tell he's been through engine repair too, right? The crankshaft is going to determine how far it travels up and down. The length of the rod determines where it is, but it's always going to have the same stroke. If you lengthen the connecting rod without changing the crankshaft, the stroke's going to remain the same. It's just going to position the cylinder a little higher or a little lower if you change the length of the connecting rod. But the actual stroke of any crank, this is your crank right here, and your stroke is determined by this, by the length, by the distance from that to that on your crankshaft.
That's the distance of the stroke.
Yeah, that's the length, the distance between here and here is going to determine how far that piston goes up and down. If you, like for instance, just think about it like this. What if you put this way out here? Isn't that going to make the piston travel a lot farther? That's going to increase, it's going to change the
And
stroke.
That
And
first X is your center line.
yeah, that's the center line of the main journal, and that's the center line of the rod journal.
Okay, I got you now.
See that? So this right, the distance between here and here is what changes that. But like I say, if you put let's say that you left this alone, and you got a rod that long, all right, now let's take that rod and put a longer one in there. All that's gonna do is change the place where this is in the cylinder. You see what I'm saying? All right, now let me see. How many degrees of camshaft rotation are needed to complete the four-stroke combustion cycle?
Now see, that's 720, right?
No, that's the
What is it? What is that word that's in capitalized letter?
Camshaft rotation.
Now, isn't it for every 1 revolution of the crankshaft, there's 2 revolutions of the camshaft?
How big is the cam gear in relation to the crank gear?
It's half.
Twice.
That's what I said twice.
Twice as big. So if it's twice as big, does it turn
Half as much.
half as much? That's right. It takes a full turn of the crank gear to turn the cam gear half a turn. So
you're saying 360?
camshaft rotation completes the four-stroke combustion cycle every 360 degrees, right? So I mean, every cylinder has done everything it's going to do by the time the camshaft is turned 360.
Twice.
How is diesel fuel ignited in a warm diesel engine?
Heat of compression.
Heat of compression.
Heat of compression. We've beat that like a dead horse, haven't we? But you know the glow plugs. This is a glow plug. And if I put power and ground to this glow plug, the tip of it will get red hot,
Red hot.
really fast.
I thought that was a spark plug inside of my tractor, but it's a glow plug.
Yeah. And whenever the heat from the compression is being absorbed by the cold metal, it won't start, and all white smoke comes out everywhere and all that.
What is it, heat the manifold on my tractor in cold weather?
Yeah, on some of them, it actually leaks a little fuel in there and sets fire to it. I mean, it's got a little heater and it puts that in so that there's some fuel going in there. And that's old technology, but basically, now, the Cummins diesel engines don't have glow plugs, but they've got a manifold heater. What they do is that manifold heater gets really hot, so the air that's being sucked in there is really hot going in. And so it helps them start that way, and that's a kind of an industrial grade thing like that. Okay, let's flip to the next page. There's a bunch of fairly easy worksheets on this, on this particular week, so you guys could probably knock them out fairly quick. Which diesel injection system requires the use of a glow plug?
Indirect.
Well, that's going to be indirect injection, but that is really sort of dumb to have a question like that. And the reason I'm saying that is every diesel engine that I know about, with the exception of Cummins I was talking about, the Duramax is a high pressure common rail. It's got glow plugs. The ones that's direct injection, the 7.3 Power Stroke, it's got glow plugs.
Yeah, that's what I was
So
thinking.
what does sound real good is this question right here. This is a crappy question. I'm going to have to contact the guy that wrote this textbook because I know him, and I'm going to say, what were you thinking? And you know what he's going to tell me? He says, hey, I wrote the textbook, I didn't write the questions. That was done by some question writers. But for future reference. Okay, let me ask you this, since we're in electrical too. Let's say I've got 8 glow plugs, and I need to know if one of them is burned out and is not doing anything. And I want to do this the quickest and the easiest way I can do it. In other words, all I'm wanting to know is, how do I determine if one glow plug is burned out?
They're all in the same circuit, right?
They're all being fed by the same wire. Now, I will say that some of the California trucks and the later model stuff have got each one of the glow plugs fed by a different circuit from a module so that it can monitor the current draw on each glow plug. But I'm talking about the ones that have it all fed on a bus bar, together. So what would I do? Knowing what you guys know and what you've learned in electrical, what would be the slickest way to determine with a one simple test, you can find out, do I have a bad glow plug or do I not have a bad glow plug?
What's it called, back,
Voltage drop test?
No, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do it with a voltage drop test.
no.
I've got to show you how to think. Quincy, you know, don't you? I mean, you drive a 6-liter Power Stroke diesel with glow plug. His glow plug can be changed without pulling the valve covers. On a 7.3 you couldn't. So what do you think? He's also got a horizontal fuel conditioning module.
Who?
We can just pull the plug and see if anything
What's it
changes.
called? Diesel buddy of mine.
What you do is you get an inductive amp probe, like on our charging system tester, and you clamp it around the wire that feeds those glow plugs, and you turn that thing on and let the glow plugs burn. Now, to begin with, you don't have to know how much each glow plug. This is one of those things where getting good information off of a good vehicle is crucial. All right, now if you're pulling, if you put the thing around there, all right, Joe, you can't put your head down in a beer joint, pick it up. All right, his body is on holiday mode, is what it's about to. Anyway, put your inductive probe around that wire feeding the glow plugs, turn it on, and on the old Power Stroke, on the old 7.3, each glow plug would pull about 25 amps. How many amps is that total? 25 times 8. 200. It starts out pulling 200, but then they drop back to 15 amps. How much is that? What's 8 times 15?
Where your grandson at?
My first great grandson. Huh?
120?
About that, 125, yeah. But I mean, the long and the short of it is, here you are, or about 120, yeah, but you've got, they get hotter, they pull more amps until they heat up, and then the current that they draw drops back. So here you got 120, so if you see it, let's say I hook my thing up and I turn the key on, and this thing goes up to, what, 175? And then it drops back to like 105. I know one of them glow plugs is dark. I don't know which one is yet. And basically, if you unhook from them and you take your test light and hook it to hot and touch the tip of that glow plug, you'll typically find one that's not lighting up. Then that's one you'll change. So one of the things, sir. All right.
2 years ago when I was in Panama City, right? I guess when it was in the morning time. Then when I had crumpled my truck, I guess I had to wait for it to warm up or whatever. I just wanted to crump it up. So then, as I was like easing out the hotel room, out the parking lot or whatever, my truck just cut off.
Yeah. So you didn't actually wait for the glow plug. You just fired it right on
I
up.
just fired right up.
Yeah.
And then when the Ford people came and got it, they said it was like a sensor or something. either a switch or something.
Well,
Yeah, they
that
said
probably didn't have anything to do with you just starting it right up and driving off on it. Cause I mean, that's not, if it starts up, it's gonna go on unless there's something else wrong. But now on that particular one, you got a high pressure oil system that operates the injectors. And there is back in on where that high pressure oil pump is, there's a fitting it like to pop off. There's also an oil rail pressure sensor too that can cause stuff like that. That's Brett. Let me see what he says. Hey, Brett. Hey,
Hey,
talk to me.
okay. Your lower is 246.58. Has 93,000 miles on it.
Lower. What does that mean? Just the lower intake?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Well, and how long take to get it?
Well, it's coming out of Kansas, so about 4 days.
My word. Okay. I'm gonna try to push her to put that new one on there because I don't like that.
I would recommend also, because the only other one he had to offer was at 140,000 miles, and he said he didn't really want to sell it because it was in B condition.
Well, you're not gonna wear out an intake manifold, but
Right.
this one here would have been okay if it hadn't put JB weld all over it at the
Exactly.
other shop over there. All right, I'll find out what she wants to do.
Okay.
All right. Now then, let me see here. Where are we at?
13.
Okay. What fuel system component is used in a vehicle equipped with a diesel engine that's seldom used on the same vehicle when it's equipped with a gasoline engine?
Water fuel separator.
Yeah, you don't typically have a water fuel separator on that. Yeah, now his Power Stroke has got two filters. It's got one in that horizontal fuel conditioning module. It's got another one up there on the engine. So the diesel inject, and yours has actually got a water and fuel light that keeps coming on, doesn't it? You think you may have some water in your fuel? Yeah, he actually drained that out there, didn't he? And it went off, then it came back on. Didn't it? Diesel injection pump is usually driven by what?
Isn't it gear in the camshaft?
Yeah, typically it's driven by the same thing that, sort of like what at distributor speed, half engine speed, typically. But basically, the older way of doing fuel injection, you had these lines, these hard metal lines that snaked from the injector pump to the injectors. Now, let me tell you something about that you're probably not going to hear anywhere else anytime soon. Those lines have to be all the same length.
Yep.
Those lines have to have no tighter of a bend radius than 2 inches usually. If you got the bend radius too tight, you'll have issues. Now, I have seen situations where people built another line and just put it on there without regard to the length, and it would skip on that cylinder. So that's just pretty interesting in and of itself.
You also have
Okay, how much pressure is usually going through those lines?
a lot.
1,800 to probably 2,800 pounds, depending on the vehicle, right? Pretty good bit. Okay, if I've run one of my regular diesels out of fuel and I need to bleed it out, how am I going to do that?
Turn the engine.
I'm going to spin the engine while I open all of the injector. First, you got to fill up the injector pump. If there's a bleed for that.
Can't you do them one at a time?
Yeah, you can, but I like to just loosen them all. And then when you're spinning it over, as you see the fuel start squirting out, you tighten the ones up that the fuel's squirting out of as they go. And after a while, all of them, in a pretty short period of time, it'll start hitting on the ones that you're tightening up, and all that, and so they'll bust off and run. And now on the 7.3, you didn't have to bleed nothing. The old 7.3 I'm talking about, not the pre-Power Stroke, but the one that was Power Stroke with the Huey injectors, you didn't have to bleed doodly squat. You just put some diesel in and fire it up. It fire right on up. All right, let me see. Which diesel system supplies high pressure diesel fuel to all the injectors all of the time?
High pressure common.
That's high pressure common rail, and on a high pressure common rail, you've got a fuel rail pressure sensor that's giving feedback information to the computer. Now, the strange thing about that high pressure common rail thing, like on a Duramax, for example, on a Duramax, if you disconnect on the ones that I know about, if you disconnect the solenoid that controls that pressure, then it will max out. Now, on the older Power Strokes, they had the high pressure oil they controlled it the same way. If you disconnected that one, it would go to nothing. So, they go opposite directions as far as that kind of thing right there. Yeah, I don't know about the Common Rail 6.4. I need to research that particular little nuance of it. Which of these takes place during regeneration in a diesel particulate filter? A, EGR systems being actively tested. B, soots being burned. C, the oxygen sensors being cleaned. D, catalytic converters being purged. That's actually B, soots being burned. Did you know you can drive one of these diesels with a particulate filter on it through downtown Los Angeles, and the air coming out of the pipe is cleaner than what's coming in the air cleaner? It's cleaning the air up while it drives down the road. Okay, selective catalytic reduction uses urea injection to reduce what kind of emissions?
We're gonna go with NOx.
NOx, yes, exactly right.
That word just sounds like a bad disease.
It's actually urine. Is what it is. That's what that's what it is, basically. You know, it's like that's been dried, you know, sort of. Except I think that's got a liquid to it, but they use it for that, and that's just strange, you know. But you have to get diesel exhaust fluid nowadays. You probably got that. Y'all sell that at O'Reilly's, don't you? Yeah, the only new ones that go that. You got to fill that up every so often.
B.
18. This diesel engine is what type?
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna look at that picture there. This diesel engine is what type? Indirect injection, yep. When compared to a gasoline engine, the diesel engine may be blank than a similar size engine. Typically it will be, and I'll tell you something else about diesel engines too. They got a seriously thick radiator on them. The radiator is really thick on a diesel engine, and they've also got to usually have to have some way to help get cabin heat faster, because they don't get warm quick enough to heat your cabin up. So they basically are going to use, you know, some, like on the old 7.3, they basically close the exhaust and make all of it go out one side. You know, you had a little oil-operated piston that did that. On the Power Stroke and the Duramax, they changed the vanes and they choke the exhaust that way, and it makes it get hot that much faster. It also spins the turbine faster than that. Anybody got any questions about that?
Negative.